Good Wednesday to you, everybody in Com 702. Welcome to week 2. How's everybody doing? You all right? Did you get a little bit of a rest over the long weekend? I hope so. Okay, a little time off. Feeling better. Feeling ready for statistics. Well, in that vein, let's get things started, right? Okay, that's much better. I am back again, Dr. Jeff Gardner, now your sufficiently caffeinated communication instructor. And before we take a look at the readings from last week and your answers there too, got a couple of house cleaning items to get to for you. Some of you sent me emails asking about lab number 2. It's posted. It's over in the assignments folder. But likewise, although it's only the second week of the semester, I want you to note, and it's not too early to start, on your research paper. Okay, and that's also over in the assignments folder. If you go over there, please take a look at that, download it, print it out. Okay, start thinking about a topic. All right, and the sooner you get started, the easier it's going to be. One of the things about quantitative research is there's just a certain amount of time that it takes. You've got to go out there and get the data to be able to analyze the data, and you can't just pull it from, say, an article search. It's not like doing an historical analysis. People respond the way people respond. Okay, so on that note, and you will note in the instructions that you're only being asked to put together what might be a pilot project or a research design. You don't have to do a huge full-blown study. Okay, and if you're going to, and I encourage you to, if you're going to do a survey that you give to live people, please ask Dr. Brown and I about the NIH certification process to give you human subject research, HSR. I think I got that right. Certification. And what is that? Well, this is not a drill. Welcome to your professional life as a professional researcher. And as such, as doctoral candidates, you're working under the authority of the university, as am I and Dr. Brown. And it is of, it's just of ethical importance, but it's of legal importance that you understand the laws and the regulations and the proper conduct that when you're dealing with information from live people. And by the way, it doesn't matter what that information is. You might be saying, oh, well, I'm just going to survey them and ask them about their favorite celebrities. So what's the harm? There are some liabilities involved with how you handle information from people. And the NIH program and the Human Subject Research Certification, which is really straightforward. It's an online module. I think it takes like 20 minutes or something, maybe max. And you get a certification on the end. And basically what it is a process that says, okay, here are the rules. Here are the laws when it comes to handling information, even from anonymous sources, that is, people that don't give you their name in their survey. Do you understand these? Will you abide by them? And in watching the training, and then you go through a little certification test, and you get a certificate that comes out at the end, you're basically saying, yeah, it's like the syllabus quiz, except for now you're on the world stage. So I encourage you to do studies that would have you put together a survey and ask real live folks about whatever your topic is, but make sure to ask Dr. Brown and I about getting the human subject research certification before you do. Okay, let's switch gears. Take a look at last week. Dr. Brown sent out an email, I think it was today, concerning Lab 1 from last week, and he's encouraging all of you who did not get good solid 25, so that's, the maximum points, to take another whack at it. You've got 2 tries for this lab. Why is that, you might be asking? Because we're not going to give you 2 tries for all of your labs. Lab 1 and week 1 can be, they can be called foundational. All right. The information that we're covering in the readings in week 1 and the processes that we're having you go through in the lab in week 1, these are foundational pieces of information and foundational processes. And we're going to build on these throughout the semester. Okay, well, what do we mean by foundation? Okay, so first and foremost, you've got to get it down cold. just like you know your left from your right. What types of data are there? How can you distinguish between categorical and continuous data? Okay, why is it absolutely essential for you to know this? Because although throughout this class, yes, you're learning a lot of things. You're learning how SPSS works, and you're going to be learning new terminology, exciting stuff, and various statistical tests. You learn what an ANOVA is, and regression analysis, and a t-test, and all that stuff. Get down to the heart of it. What is at the center of what we're trying to teach you? It is this: that at the heart of quantitative research, at its usefulness, is knowing what sorts of tests can be used to answer what sorts of questions, and what sorts of data do you need to run those tests to answer those questions. So let's say you make an observation of some sort of a communication exchange. Doesn't matter what. Let's just say it's two people sitting in a food court in a shopping mall, and you're sitting off a far, note and pen in hand, and you're recording the interaction. There are a lot of ways you can record that interaction. If you were close enough, you could be writing down what the one person says and then what the other person says in response. All right, you could do that in a qualitative way. But you could also be writing down how many times the first person says a certain thing or uses a certain category of word, and how many times the other person responds with a certain thing or a certain category of words, and back and forth. And so you're actually making a count between one subject and the other. All right. What kind of questions do you want to ask about the meaning of that interaction? Do you want to ask how it is that what the first person says affects the second person, or do you want to ask how it is that what the second person says in response affects the first person, and so on and so forth? There are some tests in quantitative research that are better suited for answering certain questions. And those tests, some tests require certain kinds of data, and some other tests require certain other kinds of data. Now, I'm not going to get into the which for which, because we'll talk about that when we cover the quantitative measures, the quantitative tests. But foundational to that discussion, before we get to that discussion, is your understanding of the types of data. Okay, so in that respect, week one is foundational. Secondly, because it's the tool that we use, your understanding how SPSS works is also foundational. Now, I've gotten emails. I received emails last week from some of you that's like, I don't understand. I'm confused. How am I supposed to tell by looking at SPSS which is which is categorical, which is continuous data, and what are all these numbers? And okay. We haven't given you a long discussion of SPSS. This is what it is, and this is how it works on purpose. Now, for each lab, if you follow the directions, say, for instance, in lab number 1, if you follow the directions to how to get these descriptive statistics for your categorical variables, you'll get the process, you'll get the numbers that come out. What they mean and why they were put together that way, we'd like you to dig around a little bit. Okay, honestly, I mean that's part of what we're going, what we're doing here. Now, for SPSS, for instance, and there are lots of resources you can read, you can watch a video. You will see, if you just dig a little bit, that there's a standard acceptable type of coding that is how you enter the verbal responses, how you translate those into numbers, because SPSS doesn't read language, it just reads numbers, and get that into SPSS. There's some standards for that. So, for instance, yes, the standard is it's always represented as the number 1, and no is represented as the number 2. Male is represented as the number 1. Female is representative of the number 2. Now, when you enter your data into SPSS, you can assign those categories, yes, no, male, female, any numbers you want. You could make, I don't know, yes 8 and no 15. And male 3 and female 12. All right. But learning the standard categories will allow you to speak to and to understand other people that are using SPSS and quantitative research. Okay. So, you could talk, for instance, any way you wanted. I mean, you could talk like, you could spend your day talking like Yoda. Learn SPSS, you must have passed the class, you will. Okay. I mean, sorry, George Lucas, but nobody's going to understand you. Okay. So we want you to dig around and learn this stuff. And you might be saying, yes, but why? I've got so much to do. And now you're having me dig around and you're not giving me all of this stuff. Well, I'm going to tell you why we want you to dig around. I have been in academics I'm going to make myself sound really old, about 30 years. I don't know everything. I mean, I researched and worked as an academic in medieval history for years and years and learned, all kinds of different languages and how to read ancient scripts and all communication phenomenons. I didn't, I wasn't, my head wasn't in the communication space, but that's essentially what I was doing. And then now I work in communication. I don't know everything. Far from it. In fact, the more I find out what I haven't found out. The more that I know, the more I find out how little I really know. Okay. Same goes for Dr. Brown or any of your professors, any of your instructors. Okay. But here's what we're trying to teach you. We're not trying to teach you everything by way of some sort of a volumetric measure of knowledge. No, no. That the heart of being the excellent doctor that you're becoming is learning how to dig around. I don't know everything, and you're not going to know everything. But what you should be aiming to know is where to find things out quickly and accurately. That's what we're after here. And that type of skill is something that you have to do learn rather than be teach taught. Sorry for mutilating the words, but you understand what I mean? Okay? What we want you to do, what we're pulling, we're rooting for you to do. Learn how to dig. Learn how to find. Learn how to sort. Learn how to, but this is by way of information and data. Information, data, interchangeable terms. Learn how to distinguish the difference between when you're dealing with data, difference between gold and garbage. That is how you'll become the excellent doctors that you're becoming. And we can't teach you how to dig if we give you everything. So this class is not about you trying to figure out what it is we want you to figure out. It is not an Easter egg hunt. All right. So if you're unsure about what it is we're trying to get you to figure out, you can ask. That's fine. In this case, the answer might be what we're trying to get you to figure out is how to learn the process of going to dig out what it is you need to know to figure it out. And that might seem frustrating at sometimes. You've got a lot of other things to do, other classes, lives, you're working, you have families, maybe you'd like to sleep sometime. I don't know. Selfish. But that's okay. That's okay. You were wonderfully and fiercely made. You can navigate a little frustration. All right, all of us can. Okay, so that's what's going on. All right. Okay, let's take a look at the questions, the readings from last week. See what you said, and if there's anything we can add to them that is useful. Question number 1: how do the fundamental characteristics of social science make it different from other types of inquiry, and what biblical principles provide a healthy perspective on how we should approach and value social science research? Okay, Amanda, I like what you're up to. Let's see what you have to say. The fundamentals of social science research are different, not only by name from other types of inquiries, because they focus on importance when examining systematic experiments and questions. When we look at sciences, we can classify them into 2 categories: natural science and social science. Social science deals with human society and social relationships. And now I'm spot on, Amanda. I'm not. Maybe I'm betraying a bias here, so I'm trying not to. Okay. And, because I'm in it. I'm in the social science, but of the 2, social science is of greater importance. Now, and and by the way, this is coming from, a huge, outdoorsman. I don't know what the term that we like to use now. It doesn't matter to me because that doesn't affect how and why I plunge into wild spaces. In fact, I have to be out in wild spaces, like I have to take a shower or eat. I'm just not right without it. And so I am very much involved in the process and the study of how to maintain and protect these natural spaces. All right. I can say with absolute certainty, I have never seen a tree conserve anything. I've never seen a species manage anything. People are the solutions to problems. Now, yes, of course, there are problematic people, but people are never the problem. People are the solutions. And therefore, those studies which concern themselves with the interactions between people and how we interact with the world are of preeminence and greater importance. This doesn't say that the other stuff shouldn't be done. I'm just looking at a hierarchy, in my opinion. Okay. Let's see. Biblical principles are often incorporated into our everyday lives and activities without a consciousness and deliberate decision making on our parts to employ the principles. And this is from Davis. I believe this is similar to applying biblical principles to social science research. You can take. I'm sorry, Amanda. This is me messing up your answer. Yours was perfectly fine. You can take many concepts and apply them to research. Social science and biblical perspectives encourage us to use our senses to observe and understand the material. Okay. Yes. Well said. Let me add, and you're right on target, Amanda. And biblical specific to Judeo-Christian. Okay. It's not coincidental that countries that were well steeped in Judeo-Christian principles, and we're talking here about biblical principles. We're talking not only about, and we say biblical principles, we don't mean knowledge of the Bible. Now, you cannot have the one without the other. You cannot have a familiarity with the principle without exposure to the source. Okay, so, but they're not separate from each other. They're complementary. They're sort of hand in glove. So it's not coincidental that countries that had a long historical and culturally central focus on biblical principles, we might call it a sacramental worldview, were countries that developed the sciences, both in the two categories that you point out, natural and social sciences. Why is that? Because at the heart of the biblical worldview, of the sacramental worldview, is the proposition of a unifying, a singular force. It is the opposite of an animistic worldview. That is, that there are multiple forces, each unique to the substance, rock, tree, squirrel, that they inhabit and embody. It was Christianity that proposed, no, there's a singular source, a singular creator, and this is a truth with a big capital T, not a theory, not a proposition, a singular unifying force behind the material world. And that's the starting point for Western sciences, both in the social and in the natural sciences. Most people don't know that the Big Bang Theory, that is, the theory as to where the material universe came from, was put forward by a Catholic priest. I mean, he was a scientist, but he started from the position that there is a universal, singular, homogeneous force that makes the material world run. And diggity-doo, here we are in statistics. And if you remember, I think Dr. Brown sent this out in an announcement saying, look, when we talk about probability, this is why we're so obsessed with the 95-5% split. Because if we say that something happens 95% of the time, and I think he sent you a video on flipping coins, If you didn't watch that, go ahead and watch that. So if you took a quarter, here's when I just picked it up from my desk. Okay. And you flipped it, let's say 100 times or 1,000 times, 95% or greater, you should expect this coin to land both heads and heads or tails, a near even split. All right, with a 5% difference, no greater than. So maybe sometimes it's like 46. Let's say you flip 100. It's 48 heads and 42 tails. Okay, but what if that's not the case? What if greater than 5% of the time there were more heads than tails? There's some other force besides the unified force that runs the material world that's at work on this quarter. Maybe it's a trick quarter. Maybe it's heavier on one side. Maybe the recorder, the person writing down the heads and tails, is getting it wrong. Maybe they're recording them inaccurately on purpose. There's some other force, there's some other phenomenon besides this unifying force. And that comes from Christianity. It's wrapped up and packaged in what's referred to collectively as the natural law. And if you haven't already, let me recommend a book to you. I know you may have read this in your classes, but if you've read it, go back and read it again. C.S. Lewis's Mere Christianity. Listen to what he says. And he's talking about atheists and those that deny, that not just say that I don't belong to one religious grouping or another. They deny the existence of this universal force. And we're going to use God to describe that force. Okay. And in other languages, I mean, you can say Allah. And in fact, Christians in the Middle East say Allah. This is not an Islamic thing. All right. We're talking about the same force. Okay. So for those who deny the existence of a unifying universal force, he says, quarreling, there's the people that are going to argue with you about this, means trying to show that the other man is in the wrong. And there would be no sense in trying to do that unless you and he had some sort of agreement as to what right and wrong are. Just as there would be no sense in saying that a football player had committed a foul unless there was some agreement about the rules of football. In other words, what C.S. Lewis is pointing out, and it's often wrapped up in the dictum as a self-referential statement. It is true that there is no truth. And those that deny the existence of this unifying force and this consistent force are in a sense caught in that self-referential statement. It is a truth that it is no truth. And you say, self-referential because it contradicts itself. So don't get distracted. Okay? And understand that as someone in the social sciences that you are pursuing, and you're pursuing a high calling. And I've often heard it say, communication, that's soft science. No. People are tremendously complicated. And the multifactorial outcomes, that is what the world caused this, and there are so many things. I mean, you think that people that analyze the weather have it tough. You start looking at the behavior of people. You have these variables, and is it going to snow or be sunny or cloudy or whatever? Ain't even close when you get to human behavior. Okay, good answer, Amanda. All right, let us move on. Excuse me. What role of theory in social? What role is? Why am I mutilating this? What is the role of theory in social science research? Please discuss this question with at least 2 of your classmates. Oh, and I should say, by the way, it is imperative, meaning you must, to read and answer these questions on time and respond to your classmates. You must. I mean, come on. You must at least get the minimum number of responses, and you must answer the question. Do you know when you don't answer the questions, you reduce the pool of people with whom your fellow classmates can interact? That's not fair to them, and that's not wise for you. I have seen more grades. I'm talking about across the board at Regent, not just in this class, because I've taught this class for a number of years with Dr. Brown. I have seen more grades absolutely sunk because people didn't participate in the weekly discussions. And by the by, you may see these concepts and a query about these concepts and definitions in another form, like a final exam. A wink. Please keep up. Okay. What is the role of theory in social science research? Okay, Timothy, I like what you're doing here. Towards the bottom of your answer, you just like bam, you nail it. A theory constitutes a tentative explanation of a complex phenomenon, such as the nature of learning or that of intelligence. Boom. I want you to keep this straight, because this is one of those areas that I see is muddled a lot. Okay, that the role of theory, as you point out here, Tim, is a tentative, meaning proposed, explanation. It's an attempt to explain the why, but it is not the why. Does that make sense? So often when I read papers and people say, well, and the theory says that people are going to do this and therefore they're doing that. All right, unless the people that you're talking about have the theory on an index card in front of them, I go, oh wow, this is the social construction theory, and therefore I should socially construct everything. Like, bah. No, theory proposes is sort of our, why do people do that? And therefore, it's malleable. And as we learn more, and we go, yeah, okay, and be on the lookout. There are some theories that don't hold up and they're gone, and then some parts of them that even when the theory in a whole doesn't hold up and it's gone, some parts persist. Marxist theory is one of those, and I'm just going to tell you, as a scholar and a theoretician, I don't think this was a good theory. I mean, analytically, quantitatively speaking, but the core of Marxist theory just won't go away. Yeah, it's like an Andrew Lloyd Webber production. Sorry for any lover of Cats and Phantom of the Opera and stuff. Not my cup of tea. All right, this is just me. All right, it just keeps going and going and going. So central to Marxist theory is that the engine of history, the thing that makes things happen, is the conflict between the classes, notably the producers and the non-producers, the bourgeoisie and the proletariat, the haves and have-nots, not just in terms of production, but material things. Okay, there are many instances in historical interaction and events that don't fit this model, and yet the oppressor-oppressed nature of that theory persists, and you find it all over in gender studies. For example, just to point out where. Okay, so theory is our best attempt to explain why. Theory doesn't drive the why. Please be really careful about getting that in the correct order when you write your papers. Okay, question number 3. What are the 4 different levels of measurement and what kinds of data do they produce? Now, at least for my group, I got to say that reading through your answers, a lot of you categorized or presented in sort of a catalog fashion the different kinds of data, but only some of you got the first part of that question, that is the 4 different levels of measurement. All right, we're not just here to memorize the terms and to spit them back. I mean, you could teach a parrot to do that, and we're mammals, not avian creatures, not aves, not birds. All right. So please be sure that you understand not just what the definition of the thing, whatever it is, but what does it mean? What does it mean? Okay. Cassiopeia. Man, what a great Greek name. I like what you did. I think you really you put it very, very well. And so I'm not going to read through all of these because there's a whole bunch, but so 4 different levels of measurement. What kind of data? So I mean, although you started with the data, so like nominal. Okay, nominal includes categorical data only. Essentially, these are either or questions such as demographic information. Okay, so nominal measurements produce. See, we're driving, and this is a good answer, Cassiopeia, but for everybody else, produce this categorical data, such as demographics, like he, she. I think you have hair color, eye color, country of origin, all be considered nominal data as those, and could be grouped, but there'd be no ranking of the information. Okay, then ordinal interval ratio. All right, I'm not going to. Maybe I should, but no, I'm not going to spend much more time on that. These are the sorts of things, the types of measures and the types of data. You got to get it down cold. All right. And you will, because you are all brilliant in what you're doing. Cassiopeia, great answer. Okay. Question number 4. Why are probability, randomization, and normal distribution fundamental principles of social science research? And how do these principles influence social science research findings? Okay, Laverne, love this answer. It's great storytelling. It was even nice to read. I mean, very well composed. All right. Statistics can be, this is the answer. Statistics can be thought of as a story about a given data set. I already imagine the data living in their little village happily. When thinking about the fundamental principles of social science research, these principles should help social scientists tell a story concerning the data, populations, that they have researched. Probability, which is the likelihood that an event will occur. Randomization of the process of selecting an event without bias is important to the foundation of social science research, because these activities, when collecting data, offer validity. That social researcher is not biased in collecting data that is not skewed to his or her special interest. Also, when telling a story based on social science research, we want to find out what most people think and not just only a few. Thus, the process of collecting data and organizing it in such a way that we can find out what the average data point suggests will help social scientists tell a more succinct story. Within a normal distribution, we calculate the average of our data set. Any other data point within 3 standard deviations from the means, that is 99.3 chances, 2 standard deviations from the means, 95% chance, or 1 standard deviation from the means, 68% chance. So we can talk about data, tell our social science story based on research, and know what most of the data is accurate within 3 standard deviations. Boom, baby. Very nicely put. All right, let's just touch on those real quickly. All right, so remember, back to the foundational biblical principle of what we're doing, the not just in the sense of biblical as in, 1 Timothy. That's not what we're talking about. All right. That the material world has been constructed and is driven forward, is run by a unified force. We call that force God. I mean, think about it. On a particulate level, on the smallest level, there's no difference in composition between you and this coffee cup. But I absolutely guarantee you that this coffee cup will never seek to reproduce itself, will never, be tortured about what the meaning of coffee cupness is. We'll never wonder why am I designed with this giant hole in the top into which scalding liquid is poured? No, there's something fundamentally different about how the material that is animated, that's you and me, behaves. Okay? That's probability. Okay? Randomization, the process of selecting an event without bias. All right? Very good. Let me just put it succinctly. In your research, okay, be an investigator, not an advocator. Your purpose is not to prove a point, to advance an opinion or an agenda. I'm not saying you don't have passions and you don't have perspectives and points and you don't have agendas. We all do. but you must learn as a researcher to put those aside. And if you look at it correctly, this is actually good news for you. Your job is just to formulate important questions, ask them, and then answer them. Your job is not to put forward, propositions of opinion, advance them, and try to support them. You don't have to do that. A hypothesis is just a question. It's a question that concerns the relationship between two variables, two things, two people, two events, people and events, whatever, okay, that makes a prediction about how the one affects the other and has a direction that says, well, the effect goes this way and not that way. All you have to do is test the question. If the answer is yes, that in fact there is a relationship between these two variables, is the term we use in statistics, and it does go in a direction, and our prediction turned out to be true, the answer is yes. If the answer is no, then the answer is no. That's it. That's all you got to do. Okay. Investigators, not advocators. Okay. And then finally, normal distribution. We're going to spend a lot of time with this. Right. And this is something that much interests social sciences. Why? Social scientists. Why? Okay. Because it's at the heart of what we're trying to do. Let's just say, for instance, and I want to emphasize, when you're running an investigation, it's at the heart of what you're trying to do. Let me give you an example. Let's say that you were an elementary school teacher, and you were in charge of the kindergarten, and you wanted to find out, just for curiosity's sake, how many times, on average, could a 5-year-old jump up and down within a 1-minute time span? If you said, okay, we're going to jump up and down, ready, set, go. And you timed them, you timed 1 minute, and you counted the number of jumps. Bing, 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 bing. And you took 10 kids from the class and you lined them up. And because you want to be able to observe carefully, you're going to have them do this one at a time. So the first child steps up, and it's Julie. And you say, okay, Julie, we're going to play a little game. I'm going to say, ready, set, go. And you're going to jump up and down as many times as you can until I say stop. Ready, set, click. You click your watch, go. And Julie starts to jump up and down, and you're counting, and let's just say, hypothetically, that Julie can jump up and down 40 times. And then behind Julie is Shauna. And you say, okay, Shauna, your turn. You jump up and down, and you count, and Shauna jumps up and down 39 times. Okay, one less than Julie. And then after Shauna, it's Michael. And you say, all right, Michael, let's get at it. And Michael jumps up and down, and he jumps up and down 41 times. So you write that down 41 times. But behind Michael is Jimmy. And Jimmy ain't getting with any of this. Jimmy thinks this whole thing is stupid. He doesn't know why he has to stand here. He doesn't understand, what's the point of jumping up and down. He really doesn't like you as a teacher anyway. And you say, okay, Jimmy, we're gonna see how many times you can jump up and down. Ready, set, go. And Jimmy goes, And you're like, come on, Jimmy, you can do it. Jump up and down, jump up and down. 20 seconds, 30 seconds go by, and then you go, come on, Jimmy, just try. And Jimmy gives you a couple of jumps towards, say, the last of the, somewhere around the 50-second mark. 2 jumps. You're like, okay, next. Behind Jimmy is Susan. And she really likes Jimmy. Now, she was excited to jump up and down, but she thinks Jimmy's kind of cool. And if Jimmy isn't jumping up and down, she's not going to jump up and down. So you say, okay, come on, Susan. Suze, come. Let's do it. And she's like, and she doesn't jump up and down. And Jimmy's refusal to jump starts a trend, and the next 3 students out of your 10 either hesitate or won't jump at all. Now, what do you have? Do you have a measure of how, on average, many times a 5-year-old can jump up and down? Well, if you did, let's say there was no Jimmy disrupting your experiment, and all 10 of them jump up and down with great enthusiasm, and then you average the number out. All right, you might have a graph that looks something like this, where the number of jumps is right here, okay, on the y-axis, and the time that they jumped is right there. And you've got this bell curve that is the data is evenly distributed between, the average, and then some kids jumped a lot more and some jumped a lot less. All right? Because what you want to study is the average number of times a 5-year-old can jump up and down in the span of 60 seconds. But because Jimmy was being a pain in your neck and he wouldn't jump up and down, and he started a trend of a group within the group you were studying not jumping up and down, you get a graph that looks like this. You get this long stretch of time on average with no jumps, and then you get this little spike towards the end. All right, now that doesn't mean that something isn't going on here, but it's not the thing you want to study. If you wanted to study how or what motivates a 5-year-old to jump up and down and what does not motivate a 5-year-old to jump up and down, this outcome is your study. It is old Jimmy saying, I'm not doing it, and then everybody else following Jimmy. If that was your study, fine. But your study is the average number of times that a 5-year-old can jump up and down. So what you need to get is data that is distributed in a nice, even way that lets you take that measure. Does that make sense? And as you go through and we're gonna talk about the normality of distribution. All right, so that's a key one. Keep that in mind. Distribution is key. It's not that there wasn't something going on in your jump up and down experiment, but the distribution of the data that you got was not distribution. You can see from the shape of the curve. We'll talk about histograms and bell curves. It was not distributed in a way that would let you answer the question of how many times in the space of 60 seconds can a 5-year-old jump up and down. All right? So distribution is key. So keep that in mind, and we will come back to it. You're going to see the distribution issue in question more as we proceed through this course. Okay, everybody, I try to keep these things around a half an hour. I see I'm about 10 minutes over. Apologies. All right. Please, if you have any questions, reach out to Dr. Brown and I. Work hard on Lab 2. Now we're sort of kicking things up in terms of what we're looking at. All right. I know you're going to do well. Okay. Don't let these terms and things confuse you. You hang in there, and remember, dig. But if you dig and you're still not finding what you need, then reach out to us. Okay, everybody. I think about you. I pray about you. Take care, and I will see you on Blackboard. God bless. Bye-bye.